Welcome everyone. Talk 2, Electric Boogaloo. This is Liminal Space Mechanics, breaking the fourth wall by me. A little disclaimer. So I'm going to be sharing some things that when you try to replicate it on your device may break your device if you do it wrong. So with that being said, uh, you do not, by watching this talk, you agree that you're not going to hold me accountable for any damages to your device or your email account, safety, or any of that. Just because it's a little jank, but that's what I like here. Okay, so I guess just gonna kind of cover the agenda. I'm gonna give you a little intro. We're gonna talk about games as viruses. Then we're gonna go into scraping data, sort of SMTP mail client stuff, save files, and desktop pets, as well as sort of ethics around all of this. So, who am I? It's an existential question, but I'm soon to graduate. I'm a senior in IMGD. I've made around 70 games to date. 60 of so are online, and four more are on their way within the next 3 weeks. um, God. I gave this talk last year, DIY mocap, and I highly recommend seeing it if you're interested in animation or if you don't like animation but you want animation in your games. Um, and I'm most well known for around school for my industry leading academic research on toilets and within games. Um, and I'm about to share some forbidden scripts with you. So get ready because here we go. All right, so games as viruses. First, I want to start off by kind of explaining what liminal space is. The word liminal comes from a Latin root limen, which means threshold. It's the space is the crossing over space where you've left something behind, yet you're not fully submerged in something else. A sort of space, transitionary space. And I think there's two ways of sort of taking this or interpreting it. It's a space between reality and game, right? There's this concept called the magic circle, and you can kind of think of liminal space as like the in-between space. Otherwise, you could also think of it as like the next frontier, ripe for some cool shit. Um, but really, how does it apply to games? And I think it's through the mechanics. So liminal mechanics are seen through in games that have immense power over more than just the given domain and boundaries of that game world. Now, this could be the power to create from text files, emails, messages, the power of knowledge, knowing your name without asking, the power of persuasion, impersonating your friends and family, the power of destruction, deleting it, or modifying files or deleting itself. And so there's a lot of, really cool superpowers that, games with liminal mechanics appear to have. And I'm going to teach you how to make them. But first, we got to understand them. So the power to create. Now, credit where credit is due. One of the first games I've seen actually use liminal mechanics is even Zanotti's 2012 release of I'm Scared. It was a walking sim horror game made in Game Maker, but it had a twist. It had a pen pal that would leave you messages on your desktop, and it was quite haunting, honestly. A lot of people who played it on Game Jolt thought it was a virus at first. But that was part of the narrative, so it really, really did it justice. The next is sort of Doki Doki Literature Club. Now, I don't want to spoil anything because it's a really good game, but it uses pretty much every sort of liminal mechanic gimmick I've seen out there. Again, I don't want to spoil it. It's just go play it on Steam. It's free. Uh, Even if it doesn't seem like up your alley, it is quite it's quite the experience. And power of persuasion, impersonating your friends and family. Now, this is where things can get a little interesting. So, Oxenfree is a point and click narrative game that either lets you, your friends communicate with you asynchronously, and it kind of impersonates them. And other games that sort of do this, I guess Death Stranding try to coin it, but like a stranding game, right? It's a game like, even Dark Souls where you can leave notes for other players or like leave things behind. And but the great part about this game though was it actually even if your friends didn't play the game, it would still pretend that they did, and like just pull from your Steam friends list. Only problematic thing that could arise from that is like, let's say, um, you have a friend on your list that, perhaps died, and that you haven't really, wanted to maybe unfriend them because maybe just sentimentality or, just why would you do that? And let's say they jump into your game or something, or you see them in a game, it might really be a weird, jarring experience. Same goes for like breakups or anything like that. So it's kind of got to be careful and tread carefully with those sort of, I guess, just tread careful there. And then there's Morai, which was a similar game, but is no longer in existence anymore just because of the servers being an indie game and all. And then there's the Power of Destruction. Now, lose lose, and I'm gonna mute it, but it basically is a game with real world life consequences by Zach Gage, where each alien in the game, like Space Invaders, is actually a file on your desktop, or not even on your desktop, but anywhere on a computer. And this is really risky to play because, while you could be deleting, your homework or anything like that, it could also be like system files. So slowly but surely, you're like corrupting your own computer by playing this. I think the highest score is like 400 files before someone literally just deleted their OS. And so, yeah, this is the extreme. I wouldn't recommend doing this. It's a neat concept in terms of just experimental games, but I wouldn't try to replicate it in any way. Um, so next, scraping data. So you probably have seen on your phone whenever you try to install a new app that it asks you for permission for various permissions, right? Like access to your photos, your friends, your contacts, anything, right? And you usually probably allow it regardless of actually looking at it or not. I mean, that's the whole, do you actually read the EULA in terms of agreements? Probably not. Um, but it still has to ask, which is a nice barrier for consent. Whereas with games with little mechanics, it's kind of like having content warnings. You don't want to spoil anything that might be really cool, but at the expense of someone probably, not really getting it, or perhaps it being harmful in a little bit of a way. Because in desktop apps and executables, you don't need to ask for permission. You can just take. And you can take whatever you want. It can start simple, like taking the time from the system or the time from a website. That's really easy to do. Here's the code to do that. um, and honestly, you can request pretty much anything from our server. It doesn't just end at, what's the time. And you can even, get their name. That's pretty harmless, right? You get their system name. Sure, it could be something like, I don't know, Steven69 or something. But since it is text, you can parse it, and from there remove any special characters, numbers, dashes, or anything like that, and eventually get something that resembles their actual name. I've done that for a few games, and that it's pretty easy, honestly. Um, and the great part is you could probably even pre-record various names like in Fallout 4 to actually personalize it. Um, so you can get anything from heck the webcam at any given time. Maybe you can want. I think a cool idea and execution of this would be a first-person horror game, but then it has like a jump scare photo booth, kind of like at theme parks when you're on a roller coaster. Just when you get scared, it'll take a snapshot of you. And so that could be fun. Maybe you can kind of save that and give it to the player at the end. Additionally, let's say you wanted to stream video from online, you could definitely do that and cache it. Here's the code to do that. You're welcome. Additionally, you can pull video from their computer if you just want to like randomly pull up some of their photos and stuff. I don't know what they would have on there, but I mean, hey, art games, plenty of possibility there. Um, and again, you can pull from their microphone, so that them recording messages and then playing it back to them later, or voice input using Microsoft's Windows 10 sort of voice recognition system. And I've actually used this quite a bit, and I will say that the keyword recognizer only recognizes one word. But if you use like sort of the just dictation open sort of, there's two modes of it. There's the sort of sloppy one that kind of gets whatever, but it's quicker and more real time. And then there's the one that sort of waits and has a delay, but is more accurate. I think the sloppy one's fine as long as you sort of clean it up in like during the matter, which I've done for a game of mine called Walter. So, um, but yeah, you can get pretty much anything you want. The sky's the limit. Really, anything you could think of, there's a way to access it. Just got to Google, how to get blank Unity answers. It'll be there. And if it isn't, it's probably on this talk. But yeah, I mean, what you get, there's so much things you can get, but what you do with that info is what really matters. And I think having context of that in the story of the game is really important. But also, little warning: don't store that data anywhere online without people's consent. Just just in general, avoid collecting age, especially for COPPA, FERPA, any of those sort of regulations. Otherwise, you can get a class action lawsuit. And I mean, there's plenty of ways to save data, both encrypted and not within Unity. Although I think my favorite is like player prefs. The only downside is they aren't really useful for anything like consoles. They do work on mobile and desktop though. And this is how you do it. It's pretty simple. Yeah. It's just playerprefs.set or .get. That's it. And so this is how people sort of can kind of break the fourth wall by having a character from their game kind of comment on what you've done in the game, the next playthrough or something. For example, in Undertale, let's say you can't boot up the game anymore because you like did something awful in one of your playthroughs. Then it would let you know that or not let you play. And so it's really easy to do. But I think that's sort of the real kicker of what makes this special. All right, so you've got mail. You've got mail. Because why wouldn't you want one of the characters in your game to slide into your DMs? So basically, this is a lot to look at, but I'll sort of break it down. I'm using the system, sort of, I'm pulling from that code base. And in here, a string is basically a bunch of characters, like letters. And like this is actually for a birthday game I made for one of my friends. And essentially, that was where I stored the text of the message. And since it is sort of being written to a text file, there are some things that you have to consider in terms of it'll just be one long continuous string as opposed to like very well formatted. So to format it, you have to, either use like a -n or something. But to be cross-platform, you have to use a really long system.environment.newline. I'm sure there's a better way of doing this, but that's probably the most clear-cut way to get a line space. And then once you're done with that message, you just file it right, .write all, and then choose the destination. And this is where it kind of gets interesting, and I'll kind of explain where you can save and delete things. But yeah, and additionally, you can also save like photos to people's desktop, to their wherever they want, whether it be screenshots or just photos that you wanted to share with them, like I don't know, wallpapers or something. You can have that all stored in the game, and then once the game launches or something, it'll share that with the player. And I think that's kind of the really cool thing about Liminal mechanics is that it can kind of extend the game outside of the application itself, right? You could probably be solving some sort of puzzle outside of the game using JPEGs that you have to like overlay on top of each other or something. Again, there's just a lot of cool possibility space. And so this is how you save to different places. Now, if it's on Android or iOS, application.persistent data path is a pretty safe bet in terms of saving things to other things. And as far as saving things to, your desktop, we've seen that here, just special folder.desktop. If you wanted to save it in the current directory where the game lives, it's system.io directory.get current directory. If you want to save it at a specific directory that you specify, that you already know it's going to exist, which is kind of hard to say when, it's someone else's computer. But if it's your own computer, for DevTools or something, actually just having the actual file path is perfect enough. So next, we're going to talk about email. And this is kind of, this is one way I know of how to do this. But you can send emails and text messages to your players. Now, first of all, you probably need to know their email. But let's say you're making this game for a very specific intended audience, like as a tech demo or something, and you want to wow them somehow, or leave them with like some sort of actionable. Um, you could do that by using SMTP to send an email or a text message to that network or carrier. So here's the code to do that. I don't feel like I should explain it all, but I will say, obviously I blacked out my own personal username and password. And that's the problem with this, is that it does leave your account a little bit more vulnerable. Because if someone decides to reverse engineer your game, it's right there in the code. It's not encrypted. They can literally just log into your account, which is scary. But I would say that only 1 in 200,000 people do that, or at least have the ability to reverse engineer like a Unity game or something. And and that's only coming from my personal experience, having released a game on Steam that did pretty well. But I think only 2 people emailed me saying they stuck penises everywhere in my game. And I was like, you do you. But only 2 people were able to do that. So, it's it's a numbers game. Just know that this leaves your account vulnerable. But on the flip side, it's really cool to send a text message. For example, like here, let's say you don't know the network. That's okay. It doesn't matter. You can send it to literally every network out there. And that's what I did for this project. But that's one way to sort of, instead of cut out the guesswork, just spam email every possible network. Now, if you ask you can ask for the player's contact info, but how do you check for like bad input? Well, there's a lot of different ways to do it. If you look up on I don't know, Stack Overflow or something. But I think regex or regex, programming terms are hard to pronounce, is the best way to do it. And this isn't perfect. Like, I don't think this takes into account area codes or anything if you're in a different country. But it's good enough and it works. It's not pseudocode or anything. So if you want to validate info like email or phone numbers, here's that code. And additionally, I want to mention texting bots. So you can really connect with that character. And there's a great info that I believe Tony has put on their website. And yeah, so that's that for mail. But yeah, save files. This is actually, I think, what I can kind of not coin, but this is something that I think I had a creative eureka moment of my own. So batch files. Coding, for me is a means to an end, and a good coder is a lazy one. In high school, obviously I programmed a lot of like little like apps in my calculator for just like doing basic, I don't know, a trig or something. And so that was, my first start. But then additionally, like I got kind of lazy. I was like, okay, well, let's say I want to like turn off my computer after long download, not hear the fan while I'm sleeping. How do I do that? And so I figured out you could do that with, creating a batch file. It's really simple. You just create a new text document, name the document, change the file extension name to .bat, and it becomes a batch file. And you can just double click on it and it opens. Now, in terms of editing it, you could use it in IDE, or you can just use Notepad. It doesn't really matter. And essentially, there's a bunch of commands online that do a bunch of stuff, from, putting your computer into hibernate, sleep, restart, turn off. It can have a little bit of a wait out, like kind of yield, wait type thing, and then execute the next line. It can have little notes that it leaves for players, like, little almost like error messages. You can have it delete files. And if like, if this bat file specifically is going to be inside of, let's say, the same directory as their game, you can have it delete the game. And that's what I do in this example. And so, yeah, you can leave like console error, like you open the console and type things. You can have it have like almost little error prompts, and like the sky's the limit with batch files. It's really great, and you could save it the same way you save text files, which is fantastic. So in this example, I know it's kind of really complicated, just looking at it, but In this example, I wanted to sort of scare the player. Once they like, let's say they misstepped or something, I wanted to like, freak out the game window and have it resize really fast. And had it in, and that's you could play with the window size and where the window is. Non-player controlled by like setting the resolution, and it's pretty easy to do. And then you can just do it really fast with like a little timer loop. Um, oh, and as far as the little coroutine I have down here, file write all obviously is the same thing we use for the text files, except for this time it's saving a bat, and I'm having all of the actual like commands of that bat as you see here, and I'm putting it into the string. Um, and so basically the only kind of tricky part when you're writing this is special characters in terms of strings that you have to maybe add an extra dash or something because it recognizes a dash as a certain thing. But once you get over that hurdle, it's pretty you feel pretty powerful. Um, Now, like echo is what generates this little window. I believe, yeah, delete is obviously deleting files. Um, I think, yeah, and then CLS is to sort of clear the console to make kind of remove any evidence that you actually launched batch commands. Um, and I think that's pretty much it. These path pings are basically just like the same as yield wait for seconds in Unity. But basically, yeah, you feel pretty great when you could do this. It's really scary too. And then once you've sort of created that batch file, you can create a new process and call that process using the system library, I believe, for Windows. And that's that's that. So it's a lot, I know, but that's why we have a Q&A afterwards. But yeah, you could create games that delete themselves once they don't want to be perceived anymore. You can create aware games, sentient games, sort of anything that you want to fit in your game narrative. So be them unhelpful virtual assistants, stranger viruses, distracting cursor nuisances. Desktop pets were the start of all of this, and I think they're the most playful form of liminal space mechanics. And it all sort of started with like virtual assistants like Clippy. If you all remember Clippy from Microsoft Word or Rover, Petey the Parrot. I think Microsoft realized like some psychological studies that were like saying that oh people personify electronics, and they took that too literally. And they were like, this is the future. And so they made these kind of cursed and very annoying like virtual assistants. And now we look at them with nostalgia, but back then they weren't they weren't great. But there was a real market for them, and that's sort of where Bonzi Buddy kind of came in. Bonzi Buddy realized like, hey, a lot of people are new to computers. Let's make a virtual assistant that kind of does everything for them. It tells jokes, does a lot of other things, plays games with them. And this had like a tremendous reach in terms of what it could do for you as well as what it could see from you. And they collected a lot of unnecessary information and eventually got into a huge amount of trouble because of it. It also pretended that it was a virus, so then it can sell antivirus software, which in general, I think you can understand why that's a bad idea. I mean, it's a big brain idea, but it was eventually got them sued for over $1 billion. And for a third-party developer, that was like unreasonable. Like they just went out of business. But additionally, I want to sort of shout out some really great examples of virtual pets or things that sort of draw on top of your desktop. First of all, I just want to get a shout out to Natty Lawhead, who has made probably the most virtual pets I've ever seen. Great work, and also a really cool program called Electric Zine Maker, which you should all just check out. And there's a really neat project called Descent. That I'll pull up right now. Let me know if you all can see that. Hopefully you all can see that. I'm just going to play it. Let's see if this... can I get a full screen? Yeah. So as you can see, this person clicked on their desktop, and it sort of just like has this like art piece going on where it kind of unleashes a plague of rats on their desktop as image files, and you can do all this with the code I gave you, and the code I'm probably going to give you in a bit, but eventually it gets really neat. So a cool example, and then there's Desktop Goose, which is just more of a fun, zany example, sort of playing off of the Untitled Goose game. And obviously this one leaves tracks, moves windows, kind of fights with your cursor, and you can actually control the cursor remotely. That you can Google that, how to do that. I remember seeing a Unity forum of how to do that. But yeah, again, it's it's kind of just annoying, but it's kind of fun to play with. And you could do any of that with your work. And yeah, it's kind of sparse to find this documentation. Like for example, the Windows application thing. This code, this exact code right here, doesn't actually work with modern Unity. You have to use like Unity 5.6 or 5.2 or something. And so it's really kind of a Wild West in terms of what is out there for you to learn how to do these things, and will it work when you immediately try to do it. It requires a lot of trial and error, but I think it's really worth it, and I think it can make your games feel like magic, more so than they already do. So with all this new power, should we use it? That is something you should really think about before you just go in blindly trying something cool. And I'm going to kind of give you my own game I made in high school as an example, as a case study. Something really cool I did, I think, that was like, well received, people liked it, thought it was funny, was I had this virtual desktop. And basically, when you clicked on different icons, it kind of mimicked an actual desktop and pulled things from your actual desktop. Additionally, there's like other icons like hell that would, and it was an existential game. So if you ever read like No Exit by Jean-Paul Sartre, hell is other people, right? And so it would open up social media websites at random as a little like gag, and that was pretty funny. And like, here's someone talking about it.
What is likely a more controversial part of the game is Grip Tape Backbone's use of the player's computer. Pulling no doubt from the player's Steam account, the player's name is automatically added to the game along with one mechanic writing files directly to the desktop. While putting the player's name into the game is rather innocent and a bit clever, the nature of the file that is placed on the desktop is potentially concerning to some players. The ramifications of mechanics such as these.
So basically, yeah, and then another part of the game, I had this little like text editor. It was a fully functional, like basically like notepad, and it had everything from copying, pasting, cutting, all that. But it also had like my own version of Clippy and like all the shortcuts and stuff and hotkeys. But it had a hotkey called Penance to Desktop, and basically, if you had confessed enough sins in the game of your own, that would be placed both in the game world as well as your desktop. And it'll kind of generate this like text file, right? And this text file would have both the sin that you confessed, and then it would give you a Bible verse pulled random from the Bible, kind of like a Catholic confession. But I had my own confession that I threw in there that you can get possibly at random. And it was sort of, going along the lines of, my thoughts on the afterlife, sexuality, religion, all sorts of personal stuff. But that's my games, right? They're personal. But, I thought that, that's fair enough. People know what they're getting into when they play my games. But not everyone. And that's sort of where, I realized, like, what if this game was played on a family computer? and then I started to have instant regret because like I mean, while it's weird enough, I think people would look into it and kind of Google it and find forums of people being like, "Oh, this belongs to this game." If they didn't, and like let's say I don't know, conservative parents found it, or I don't know, God forbid, like kick their kids out because they had this like I suppose like awful, heinous, anti-religious like text file on their desktop. That could be really bad. And so yeah, that's again a mistake I've made, and I'll personally own up to. And I may answer for later if I become successful. But the great part is I have an LLC, which means if I get sued, it's my company that's getting sued, and not me personally. And so if you're gonna do something experimental and weird, I'd recommend getting an LLC just in case. And that's where I'll end the talk. um, yeah, I mean, there's more to talk about. That's why there's a more informal QA afterwards. So thank you so much again for having me. I know this is a little bit more short, but yeah, I'll sort of stop it there. Um, yeah, anyone want to chat?
So this is maybe a bit of a unique question, but has this experience of making these kind of like things made you consider about how you can protect your own computer? And if so, like what have you done to protect your own computer?
I mean, I don't know. I haven't really done anything. Like I mean, shit. I think I'm probably the least cautious about like internet privacy or safety. Uh, like I don't know. The fact that I'm very open. I'm an open book. So obviously, when I put Awkward out, that was very personal of a game, and other put other games since then have been very personal. So like, I feel like I've put so much of like what else could people dig up on me? Like, um, I don't know. Like I have WeChat installed on my phone. Like I have like apps that definitely are backdoors. I don't care.
We have a question from Katie in chat. So, what games inspired you to create games like these?
um, so again, I think when I first played I'm Scared, that was like the one that sort of like games can do this. Um, and I guess since then, I mean, I think it didn't even start with games though. Like I think I started learning programming by making like computer prank viruses in my school's library when I was in middle school. And that was mostly using HTML, CSS, and stuff. But in JavaScript, obviously, like have a little alert to be like, you have a virus. Uh, but I think that's sort of where it kind of inspired me to like make things like this. Supervillain origin story. Anyone else? I mean, this is pretty. You can just unmute yourself and just chat. No worries.
This is kind of a general question, but do you have anything to say to people who might now be paranoid about opening up games on their computer and having like their files sent elsewhere? Like, I don't know if you know any of kind of like the legal side of it, but I do feel mildly paranoid in a weirdly like exciting and interesting way. But
I
I'm
mean,
wondering.
I wouldn't be paranoid because it's already happened. Like your information, your personal data is already out there. Like if you own a Facebook account, you've already like there's so many third parties that now own your personal information. Like Facebook sells it too, and they profit off of it. Same goes for literally any website that has cookies on it. Like anything that you or like, I mean, you couldn't live life on the internet without getting your data stolen. It's impossible. Like I just it's convenience over privacy, but I'll take convenience. Oh, okay, yes, my projects have ran afoul on antivirus software. I did see that, DJ. Yeah, some of them do. But that's mostly because like false positives almost like it's not trusted yet. But the more a game gets downloaded, especially like an indie game, especially, the more it's trusted. Or like let's say it's published on Steam, it's less likely to be, ran as like a warning because it's from Steam, right? This is something that had to have some sort of vetting process. It's published, it has a publisher. Whereas to when you're just publishing a game without any real metadata or anything, and it's just throwing a zip up or something on a website. Yeah, like I think your computer probably asks you like, are you sure you want to run this file? You've probably ran that on Windows or on Mac, but definitely like the general like state of like operating systems is it'll sort of question anything that hasn't been tested or like played by multiple people. Multiple meaning like thousands. So the less popular your game is, the more likely it's become. It'll have a false positive that's a virus. Sorry. Are any of these tricks against terms of service for stores like Steam or Itch? No. Nope. I mean, I think stealing people's data and sharing it, like these tricks don't store data anywhere. Like they don't really store anything anywhere other than locally. So they aren't like sending, unless they're communicating with a server or something. They aren't like you're not getting anyone's data, and so therefore it's not going to violate anything because it's just using the data locally to do some cool stuff. And I don't think Itch really has any terms other than like I don't think Itch has any terms. Like I mean, maybe it does. I haven't read them. But again, who reads the EULA? Not a whole lot of people. But yeah, I have seen the movie War Games, and hacking isn't like that at all. But yeah, what is there a tutorial for the email trick? Yeah, just look up you can rewatch this video when it's out, but look up like SMTP mail client, Unity or Unreal or whatever, and you'll find tutorials probably, maybe like one or two, but you'll probably find a tutorial. Yes, again, it's kind of hard to come by any tutorials for all of this because it's like it's just really not well documented.
So for myself and also maybe like I think my parents would want to know. So like stuff like using your webcam and stuff, do you have to still like authorize the app to use it, or does it just like do it?
So if it's an app, you do. But obviously not everyone like let's say for desktop games, like no one uses like URP or whatever for like the Universal Windows app, right? Because it's like you have to have it export through and package up in Visual Studio, and it's kind of just a hassle. And so usually everyone usually plays EXEs, right? And so for those, you don't need any permissions at all. You just get what you want. Basically, you have full access to whatever you want. Yep. So EXEs are probably one of the more dangerous things that you shouldn't download without thinking twice about. But it's not you shouldn't be worried. Like I mean, it's really like people don't really do anything malicious with these things unless they're like in tech. Like if game developers, I think, are in the fun side of tech, not like we're gonna like mine you for analytics and like share that data with like ad agencies or anything, unless it's like a mobile game or something, which they do a lot of. But like desktop games usually, like I don't expect that to be a problem with like the next Call of Duty or something.
So what if you don't have a webcam?
Then I mean it just won't access it. It'll just have like a probably or could break the game if they wrote it poorly. But like yeah, it could just that's why I have one of these little like webcam covers. You just slide it on my laptop, just boop, boop. Or you can put a sticky note. I used to use sticky notes. Generally, I have my webcam like kind of shuttered whenever I'm not using it, and I don't have a mic plugged in whenever I'm not using it. And so that's kind of my advice. Just general privacy if you're just to be safe. Well, I don't know if I should call it a day unless anyone wants to just chit chat, but I think that's it.